Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reinsurance Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jared Lee.
And I'm the other co-host, Ben Rose, here to bring you the latest installment of Reinsurance News.
Do-do-do, do-do-do.
We need some music.
We're trying to figure out what is our news jingle, but
Cordy can work on that. But it's March 2023.
You can tell when Cordy's left us to our own devices.
But anyway.
For the news for March 2023.
With 1 day to go until April. So we've got a full month of news this month.
So grab your Shamrock Shakes before they go.
Yeah.
The American audience. So kicking the news off for this week, the one that really jumped out to me that I thought was interesting was the sort of tort reform changes to Florida. In the article, there's this quote from the governor saying, "Florida has been considered a judicial hellhole for far too long, and we desperately need legal reform." Which I think when you look at
it's all those Florida Man articles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you throw an alligator through a McDonald's window. Thanks, Florida Man, for my rising insurance.
We're keeping this punchy, Jared.
Punchy.
Power 3. Right.
but undue sort of legal lawsuits, this sort of storm chasers, these sort of people who chase fender benders, and everyone's damn near paralyzed because they got, they hit a lamppost at 9 miles an hour. Like, I think especially the industry, people treat reinsurance and industry oftentimes like these sort of faceless companies that just owe them money all the time. And I think there does need to be something that's brought in that allows insurance to act when it's needed and when it's justified, but not be sort of scraped for inflating claims costs because people just tack on everything else because they got hail damage or something.
No, absolutely.
Right? So,
and Florida's doubly exposed, I guess, by being so hurricane prone in the sense that, it's like,
and somebody Florida
you need
man.
a new roof,
Yeah, exactly.
There's been a hurricane in this broad area.
How are you going to keep your alligator safe?
Exactly. You're going to have to do another episode.
Please stay listening, Florida friends. We don't mean to.
Well, I also need you to do an episode at some point explaining to the British audience what a fender bender is. Anyway, for another time. What else is in the news?
So Gallagher Re came out with a report. The global reinsurers' premiums are up 12.1% for 2022 as they sort of report those numbers, while the combined ratio worsens to 95.7.
And this is super interesting, right? So we've got premiums increasing, we've got combined ratios still pretty good, but then in some cases results actually going the other way. So Lloyd's a super interesting one, right? They made I think just under a 92% combined.
Yep.
And then still ended up coming out with like a 0.8 billion loss on, like some 40 something billion of premium, which is painful, right?
Yeah.
Because you've done so well on the underwriting side to come out with a 92% combined. That's flying.
Well, and they've been trying to get their combined down for ages, and it was sort of the mission that John Neal sort of set out, and the reason they're trying to push innovation so much is how can they bring this combined ratio down? And they've done it well. They've done it now across all classes as well.
Exactly, and it must be very challenging in some ways to have that conversation in a world where we're trying to attract capital back to the space. Right, so we've just seen, I think, Aon's report on capital in 2022 declining 17%, on the prior year where it had been growing steadily for ages. So now we've got to try and persuade capital to come back to the sector when even in a year where we're underwriting really, really well, like far above our usual expectations, we're still not making money. Yeah, that's a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, for sure. A couple really interesting articles about your favorite reinsurance technology company, but announcements for...
Which one?
Announcements that both Ascot, using us for the data prep across all of their sort of submission pack stuff, as well as Generali here in the UK. So both of those things came out this last month, which very exciting for those to get the news. And thank you for people who liked and shared and did all the LinkedIn things that make us feel special when those things get announced. But yeah, super exciting stuff from
always exciting to see technology in the reinsurance news, bringing those words ever closer together.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful marriage that's intended to be. Lemonade's come out now with a crypto climate coalition protecting 7,000 Kenyan farmers. Also, I feel like it deserves some credit for getting that was one take that. So 7,000 Kenyan farmers have signed up now to this crypto climate coalition. to protect their crops during the most recent short rains of October and through to January. Um, Not entirely sure why it's based on a crypto model. It's to automate the.
I mean, it's quite odd in a number of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, great.
Yeah.
Sort of my gut response, but also, aren't you a US renters company that specializes in rapid claims payment?
Yeah.
On no particular blockchain or crypto basis.
Is it going to drive their stock performance up? It's hard to.
I think they're stuck at the bottom at the minute.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, fair play to you, Lemonade. Like you're a leading light of the insurtech world, and we hope that you.
If Daniel wants to come on the podcast and have a conversation, I'd love to have
absolutely.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
But can you explain that last one to us?
Yeah. At a very high level, I think there's some really interesting things that will happen in the emerging economies, especially in terms of like they're moving away. They're doing most like cell phone based policy purchasing and everything else, and they're leapfrogging. I can say crypto climate coalition, but I can't say leapfrog. But they're leapfrogging sort of the traditional infrastructure that much of the West sort of went with.
Yeah.
So these things could be an interesting potential gateway into how these countries might do more. But yeah, we'll watch that one as it comes.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at sort of the African continent as a whole, the economic and population potential there is so huge that perhaps Lemonade are setting their sights to massively growing markets and want to be ahead of their rivals at home there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of the more interesting spaces, and I think, as you're right, over sort of a 10 or 15-year time horizon, I think that will shift quite significantly to being a market of import. And then we have here sort of the U.S. economic hard landing is unavoidable, according to Swiss Re. So I don't know if you had immediate thoughts from their sort of feedback on.
I think it's going to be very interesting across the board when we look at the macroeconomic picture for the industry over the next year. I think we've depended on that sort of 0% style level of inflation to build our industry to the level it's been at. Lots of those conversations are now coming up for renewal. If you look across the market from do we keep our capital? If you're a big, large reinsurer, you're in a great position to some extent if it's your own equity base that you can keep in play. If you're an MGA that's dependent on capital from somewhere else, or an insurer that's heavily dependent on reinsurance capacity, your cost base is going to change substantially. If you're an ILS, you're waiting for your trapped capital to be untrapped, and then it remains to be seen whether you choose to stay in the space.
Yeah.
At the same time, because of the impact that's having on pricing, potentially that'll see new faces appear or others decide to stay in a bit stronger than they were previously. So that will be very interesting to see, I think, across the board, and with the US as the largest market in the insurance and reinsurance world, some 50% of all premium. Yeah. That's going to set the stage, I think.
Well, and these things are also interconnected, but here one of the points they really lean into is the fact that they believe that real wage growth is going to be negative for most of the year, if not longer than that. And that just sets a really bad precedent starting point from all of these things, whether it impacts how much insurance people purchase, how much they invest elsewhere. Everything begins to sort of shift if their dollar they're taking home is going less far than it has done. So, it's going to be a really interesting one to think that one through as it comes together. That was the news roundup for March 2023. Unless there's another story that you had on the top of your mind, those are the ones we'd pulled out as the most interesting stories to date.
I think the most interesting ones are when Superseed is in the news.
I agree.
I'm very biased. No, that was a good punchy roundup. We've covered everything you need to know almost about the news in March.
Oh, we didn't even touch on the sort of buzz about the pricing for the April renewals. Stay tuned for the April news roundup.
We'll see you then.
Just 1 month's time. See you then.